Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today? Let's do it. What's the scariest paranormal experience you have ever had? Please remember to like, share, hype, and subscribe. I used to be a property agent. I was alone in an old empty house on the outskirts of Sydney. I was doing a condition report, checking the walls and appliances and stuff before we made the property a rental. Big house, old house, empty house, no furniture. I was working in one of the bedrooms upstairs, checking the carpet, and was crouched on all fours with the report on the floor, writing in it. These were the days when it was done on paper, and I was writing on the floor because no table. My mind is on my work when I suddenly feel this massive weight just fall on top of me, like someone had jumped on me. No sound, no warning, just this incredible weight slammed onto my back. I fell hard into the carpet, but quickly scrambled up and ran out of the room. When I glanced back into the empty room, I saw a sort of shadow, a shimmer. It was only there for half a second and then vanished. I noped out of that house so fast, left the keys there and everything. Told my boss that I wouldn't go back there. We did lease the property, and about 2 weeks into their tenancy, the tenants asked to move out. They said it was haunted, and weird things were happening. They'd wake up in the morning and find a dining room chair from downstairs sitting next to their bed, which was upstairs. No idea how it got there, and weird sensations like someone was touching them when they were alone in the house. I had just put my daughter to bed and was watching something on YouTube on my TV. Out of nowhere, my chills ran down my spine and I came over feeling anxious. I looked up and saw a shadow move past the room, and I was into the kitchen. I assumed this was my wife, although was confused why she was walking down the corridor with the lights off and into the pitch-black kitchen again without lights on. I shouted her name and walked into the kitchen. No answer. I turned on the light. No one was there. I legitimately feel terrified, as never had anything like that happen before. My wife was fast asleep upstairs. To this day, whenever I'm in that room late at night alone, I always either shut the door or leave a light on in the corridor or a neighboring room. When I was small, a couple of years after my grandfather passed away, I went into the darkened living room to get my coloring book from my grandmother's knitting basket. As I was grabbing it, I heard a deep male voice say my name clearly. There were no men in the house, and the only television was turned off in the same room. No radio playing either, and my name isn't a common one, even if there had been. This was 4 decades ago, and I still have no explanation. Otherwise, life's been unparanormal forever after. I bartended at a hotel that was off-season and supposedly haunted. The hotel was closed, but the bar remains open. I was one of a handful of workers living in the hotel since it was closed to the public. One night, I was watching TV with my head against the wall, and the wall started beating loudly behind me, like someone was pounding on the wall from the other side. I yelled for the person to stop, and it did for about 3 minutes. I yelled again, and then it got so intense, my head was bouncing from the impact. I walked to the room and beat on the door, really mad that someone was messing with me, and knowing it had to be one of my coworkers. No one came to the door, so I walked back to my room and went to sleep. The whole ordeal was maybe 20 minutes. The next day, I went to the manager to see who was in that room. He looked and no one was supposed to be there, so we pulled the cameras. Nobody went in or out that day, and the balcony view was also clear. This was on the 2nd floor. I was a little freaked out at this point, but figured it was pipes or something, and I was being a weirdo. A few days later, I'm lying in bed early in the morning, and I hear the balcony glass fly open and bang the wall in the same room. I walked out my balcony and looked, and it was wide open. Freaked out, I walked to the manager again, and we went to check the room out, and sure enough, the balcony glass sliding door was open, and the room was freezing. This stuff happened for 2 months. I even heard kids playing loudly in the halls one night, and when we checked the cameras, there was nothing again. The manager and another worker also told me about there being some tragic deaths there. And the room I was having issues with was supposedly where a lady was killed by her husband or something like that, but I can't confirm. And I always thought they were messing with me. I didn't go back after the winter season and never heard from anyone that works there. I'm still iffy on what the heck happened, and I don't really believe in ghosts, so it's confusing to me. Some good stories today. Appreciate everybody sharing. And for those of you that were in the comment section yesterday, my son was in goal, and we won 8-1, so a pretty convincing, dominant win for the Sharks. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon. Had to stay at a great-aunt's casita for a while, which was where my great-grandma spent the last few years of her life. I noticed that the kitchen cabinets would open on their own. Okay, no big deal. The hinges are probably loose, or maybe I forgot to close them. There were 2 glass curio cabinets in the living room. They had little knickknacks inside that belonged to my aunt, so I definitely never touched them, but I'd find them open sometimes. Weird, but still okay. In one of the bedrooms, there was a large bed frame that had bookshelves and built-in cabinets. As you can probably guess, those cabinet doors opened on their own too. It was no longer okay. 3 different rooms had doors opening on their own, but the worst thing, the absolute creepiest thing, was that my dog became obsessed with my bedroom closet. It didn't have a door on it, just curtains, and she'd spend the entire day staring into it. She'd lie in front of it and just stare into the closet. We pulled everything out to check for mice, but found nothing. We even let her inspect the empty closet, but she still wasn't satisfied. Kept her vigil the entire time I lived there. My now ex-wife's house was absolutely haunted before we were married. Each night, as soon as she went to sleep, I heard some banging of feet coming up the stairs. I'd roll over and it would stop shortly before reaching the top. Another time, shoes got thrown forcefully against the door, heavy objects dropped on the floor, and another time the back door rattled almost off its hinges. There was an atmosphere to that place I'll never forget, heavy and dark, no matter how hard we tried to furnish it nicely. Whilst I'm spiritual, I'd never experienced a house like that before. There was no logical reason to explain what happened there. There was a house up on a hill where I grew up that was old and run down. The lady's husband died, she passed years later, and no one bought the property. My friends and I would ride our bikes up there and explore the house because it was the local haunted house. Older kids would spray paint pentagrams, break bottles, etc., so we thought it was super creepy. I had a disposable dial camera with me and took a picture of the front of the house the day it was getting torn down finally. We rode back to my friend's house and told his mom that they were demolishing the house. The lady who lived there was her elementary school teacher, and she showed us pictures of her. I got the role developed a few days later, and there was a person in the front window looking out at my machinery. It was the same teacher my friend's mom had just showed us, 30 years younger. We brought the picture to my friend's house to show his mom, and she went white and started freaking out. We figured it was just a shitty camera or something. In my teenage years, we lived on a farm. It had an old barn that we didn't use the downstairs for much. It used to be a horse and cattle stall area, but we still went through and cleaned it, and sometimes we would hang out. You know, teenagers, we like getting away from the family. Went in there one day and saw a boy in a red shirt. No idea who this kid is, like 9 years old, and didn't talk. Just kind of stare at me like he was surprised I was there, even though we lived on the farm and he didn't. The closest farm was quite a distance away, and it was all fields, so you could look across the whole thing and see somebody. This is important. So, having no idea who this kid belongs to, or if they're lost, or we should call the police or something, I go back to the house, which is pretty close to the barn, glancing behind me the whole way in case the kid makes a dash for it, so I can see which farm he was heading toward. My mom is outside, so I get her and we walk back toward the barn. Now in the lower level, there's only one way in and out, and that's by the sliding the massive door, which I had closed behind me. I was surprised a 9-year-old could get it open. The door never opened the whole time I went to get my mom or came back. I'm telling her about this kid, and I have no idea where the kid came from. We get there, and no kid. We searched everywhere, and we get out on the fields and calling for the kid, having no idea what his name is. Again, we see nothing, and there is no way even the fastest running kid could have somehow opened that massive door and gotten out and run across dozens of acres of farmland in time between me glancing back at the barn. We would have seen him in the fields, especially wearing that bright red shirt. But just in case somehow, we went to our 3 neighboring farms, which we actually had to drive to because that's how far they were if you weren't walking across the fields, and it would have taken forever to walk across the fields, and we all asked all 3 of them about the boy. None of them had a son anywhere in that age range or had any idea who it would have been. Never saw him again. I still kind of wonder if he was a ghost, except I don't believe in ghosts, and yet I still don't have an explanation. To this day, my mom also thinks I was making it up and lying. Not that scary, but my mother has always had this extra sense. She can sense spirits and used to see them as a child. There's nothing like chilling at someone's house or moving out of one and your mother saying there was some energy or spirit, shadow, or evil there. Coincidentally, she approached me about this apartment we lived at, saying it had bad energy. The night before, I dreamt of a shadow screaming a loud metallic noise while I couldn't move, and my parents screaming from their room. When I woke up, I slept on a chair in the living room. Their bedroom was visible. I looked at their open doorway and saw the shadow looking at me, then peel behind the doorway. I didn't tell her about the dream beforehand. The first house my boyfriend then lived in had weird shit happen all the time. It was never a development house, so I don't know that anything ever happened in it. My husband worked nights as a second job, and I was home alone with just my 2 dogs and cat at the time. Cabinets would open and close. Doors would slam and the mirror over our dresser would shake super hard and fast for 15 to 20 seconds, then go still. The first couple of times with the cabinets, I thought it was my cat, but I'd walk around and find her asleep in another room. I rationalized other things like the sound barrier being broken for the mirror suddenly shaking. We lived 15 minutes away from an Air Force base. It occasionally happens. Still, it seemed like it was happening for an awful long time to break the sound barrier. One evening, when hubby went to take a nap before work, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich and the lower cabinet 3 feet away opened and slammed closed. I was staring at it in disbelief when he came out and asked if I was pissed at him. I told him it wasn't me. He shook his head and went back into the room, and I started walking away from the kitchen when several cabinets, like 5, opened and slammed closed all at the same time. He came out fuming mad, and it started a huge argument. I told him it was just happening. I swore I wasn't doing it. And he called me a liar and said I was playing games. I had something to say. I should just say it. So I said, I think we have a ghost. He called me a child and ignored me for the next 2 days. I'm still a little salty about it 15 years later. Things happened like that for the next year until we moved out, but he still refuses to believe there was a ghost in the house. Now he treats it like some quirky little personality thing I have. Back when I was in high school, my friend and I were on Skype just doing a random homework assignment. I had told my friend on multiple occasions that I believed there was something paranormal in my house from other things that occurred. While on Skype, my friend decided to take the opportunity to taunt the entity. I kept telling her to stop and focus, but kept going. I could feel myself start to feel sick when I heard the loud voice over my laptop shouting, "Stop and get out." My computer shut off, and right then, multiple screams started happening. My dad came rushing out from the living room, panicked, asking where the screams were coming from, and I ran to my mom to hide. We couldn't tell if it was coming from the outside or inside of the house. I just remember closing my eyes while my dad ran around the house, panicked, trying to figure it out. My mom pulled out her rosary and started to cry, and just like that, the screaming stopped and the house fell silent. I'll never forget the absolute chill I had when everything was done. I couldn't sleep alone in my room, so I slept on the floor of my parents to not be alone. My laptop still worked, so that was a plus, but my parents still live in our house to this day, and I still sleep in my parents' room when I stay over. Between the ages of 10 and 13 years, I had this recurring dream of little black creatures. They looked like little cupidos with wings and completely black, coming to my bed and lifting me up. They would pick me up and drop me, then I would wake up. My bedroom was on the first floor right next to the stairs. One day they came in, picked me up, and took me down the stairs. I woke up at the bottom of the stairs without any scratches or bruises. What would be the case if I had sleepwalked and fell down the stairs? After that day, I never had that dream again. Haven't told anybody the day after. I was sitting parallel to the bar on a bar stool at the local bar chatting with a friend. My left side was nearest to the bar, my right side was nearest to the aisle about 2 feet away. A wall displaying pictures and memorabilia was on the other side of the aisle, so it was a fairly tight squeeze. The two of us women, along with the female bartender, were the only people in the bar at the time. Suddenly I heard a male voice say, "Hey," whisper right in my ear. The voice was friendly, as though he thought he knew me. My girlfriend turned white as a sheet and asked me if I'd heard that. All I could do was nod at her. We both slid off our respective stools and walked to the door. No idea who said hey to me, don't know, don't care. I was out. About 20 years ago, I lived in a house that I'm pretty sure was haunted. Electronics would occasionally turn on and off by themselves. One time the downstairs stereo turned on and started blasting in the middle of the night. Everyone was asleep and all wandered out of our rooms wondering what the heck was going on. This was before smart technologies and Bluetooth, so the only way to turn it on and adjust it was manually. There were other unexplained sounds, like the time I was sitting at the kitchen counter reading and I heard this huge crash coming from the other side of the counter. It sounded like our metal cooking pots had been dropped on the tile floor and the lids were spinning on their edges. I got up to investigate and there was nothing on the kitchen floor, nor anywhere else in the house that could have caused that kind of crash. Finally, the strangest thing happened when I came home from school one day. I was home alone and I was climbing the stairs to go to my room. As I reached the top step, I looked down the hall and saw a man standing in the bathroom. He was an older Asian man in a white suit, and he was standing there as if deep in thought. I froze in place for a few seconds until he seemed to notice me, and we briefly made eye contact. Then he nonchalantly turned away and walked through the closet doors. After a moment or two, I walked into the bathroom and no one was there. Despite the weird experiences, I never felt scared in the house, just confused, lol. If there really was a spirit there, I don't think he was an angry or hostile one. The family that lived there before us was an Asian family, and the husband was actually an architect who had designed the house. The family sold the house shortly after he died, so maybe he just liked to come back to admire his house every once in a while. I've had a couple experiences. My parents' last house we believed was haunted because there were strange things that happened, like books falling off the shelf and landing in the middle of the floor all the time. In the middle of the night one night I woke up to someone cracking open my door and then closing it, not thinking anything of it because usually my parents would let our car in my room. So I figured it was that. The next day we were eating dinner and I mentioned it to them and my parents both said no, they did not open the door. So we all assumed it was a ghost. Then one early morning I was just walking around and waking up, and I remember sitting up in bed and looking toward the doorway, and there was a kid I never saw sitting cross-legged, wearing a green sweatshirt, and then he started to turn his head toward me. Then, when I laid back down and rushed back to see him, he was gone. I then saw the same kid again in the chair next to my brother while my brother was playing video games. After we moved out of that house, nothing ever happened again and never saw that kid again. My store ghost forged my signature. Yes, this happened. Okay, to explain, I worked at a Dollar Tree for only a few months, but at the end of each night, the closers tidy up the store and do trash and go back after the manager locks the door. While the regular employees are tasking the manager counts the drawers and fills out end-of-day paperwork. Then before we all leave, the manager will get us and have us sign our final drawer count papers, then we leave. This particular night, my manager was taking me home. After I finish everything, my manager comes up to me and asks me to clock out so we can leave. I mention still needing to sign my paperwork, and she says I already signed it. Now, I know I have a squirrel brain sometimes, but I'm almost certain I didn't, so I asked her if we can go back in the office to check. So we did, and it was indeed signed, but I didn't sign it. The signature wasn't even close to mine, but it was indeed my name, and it was written in pink pen. There wasn't a pink pen in the office, and my manager and other coworker that was there didn't have one of them. They thought I was pranking them, and I proved them wrong by writing my signature right in front of them. And then I did it again by attempting to recreate the strange pink signature, and I showed them that even if I tried, I couldn't sign that well. So I had my manager and coworker try to sign my name just to see if they were pranking me, but nope, it was neither of us. And no one else was in the store. So we ruled it to be a ghost. We've already suspected there was one in the store because things would subtly move in the store from time to time when there wasn't many customers in the store. So the ghost store signed my name, and you can't convince me otherwise.